168 BC. On the plains of Pydna, two worlds prepared to collide. The Iron Legions of Rome stood against the Macedonians, ready to defend the legacy of Alexander the Great one final time. This was more than a battle. It was the last struggle for a kingdom's survival, a fight for freedom and honor, and a clash that would change the ancient world forever.
The defeat at the Battle of Callinicus was the first defeat the Romans suffered during the conquest of Greece. However, their determination did not diminish, and the Macedonian wars would continue. The Roman Republic, meanwhile, sent a new commander to the region. Towards the end of 169 BC, Rome's position in Greece appeared quite dangerous. However, in 168 BC, the arrival of the new consul, Lucius Aemilius Paullus, brought new life to the struggling Romans. On the other side, King Perseus of Macedon was determined to drive the Romans out of Macedonia. A great Macedonian army, gathered under the command of Perseus, had set out to confront the Romans in order to uphold the legacy of Alexander the Great. Perhaps this war was a struggle for survival for them, their last chance to defend their homeland and preserve their freedom. Aemilius encountered Perseus's army at the foothills of Mount Olympus. The Macedonians were positioned on the western bank of the Elpius River, just east of the mountain. Some of Aemilius's commanders were eager to attack the Macedonians on the other side of the river. However, Aemilius believed that attacking the Macedonians in their phalanx formation would be suicidal. Moreover, the flat terrain provided a great advantage to the Macedonian phalanx. Aemilius commanded a large army. The core of the Roman force consisted of approximately 22,000 heavy infantry. In addition, there were thousands of light infantry, including velites, Pergamene troops, and Greek allies. The army was accompanied by 4,000 cavalry, including around 1,000 Numidian horsemen under Prince Macedonius. Furthermore, 22 war elephants brought from North Africa were also part of the army. Meanwhile, Perseus had 44,000 infantry and 4,000 cavalry on his side. Around 21,000 of his infantry were equipped with sarissa pikes and arranged in the phalanx formation. These units were lined up in a way that struck fear into the enemy. Light troops, such as Thracian mercenaries and Illyrian archers, also supported the army. Both sides waited for a while without attacking each other. However, the spark that would ignite the battle emerged in a completely unexpected way. A mischievous mule would start the battle. A group of light troops, sent to fetch water for the thirsty Roman soldiers, moved toward the Elpius River with mules. However, one of the stubborn and thirsty animals broke free and ran quickly toward the river. Seeing this, its handlers and some soldiers followed it. When they reached the river, they saw that Thracian soldiers of Perseus were there for the same purpose. Moreover, the Thracians were trying to steal their mule. Seeing this, the Romans became furious and rushed forward. They had no intention of giving up the mule. Thus, a clash broke out between the two sides on the riverbank. Seeing the clash intensify, Perseus thought this was an opportunity to draw the Romans down. and began advancing his army toward the river. Aemilius, realizing that he could no longer restrain his soldiers' desire to fight, also gave the order to advance. Soon, the Macedonian army reached the riverbank and began advancing in phalanx formation. The Thracian troops, who were fighting the Roman light infantry, withdrew toward the flanks to avoid being caught between two forces. Despite suffering heavy losses, the Roman light troops did not retreat and continued to fight bravely to buy time for the main army. As the Roman main force approached, seeing that the light troops had been almost completely destroyed by the phalanx, lowered their morale. It was clear how dangerous it was to fight against long sarissa pikes on flat ground. Seeing the situation, Aemilius made a quick decision. He ordered his army to withdraw toward the foothills. The disciplined retreat of the Roman legions gave Aemilius some breathing room. He then gave the order to attack with his right wing. The 22 war elephants and the cavalry behind them moved forward. Opposing them were Thracian mercenaries, but they were exhausted from the fighting at the river. For this reason, they were unable to put up effective resistance against the elephants and cavalry. The Roman right wing struck Perseus's left wing with great force. The advantage of the terrain was also on the Roman side. Meanwhile, the Macedonian central force, which had followed the Romans up to the foothills, was struggling to advance on the uneven terrain. The phalanx formation was beginning to break apart. Seizing this opportunity, Aemilius gave the order to attack. As a result of the fierce attack, the Macedonian left wing collapsed and began to retreat. The Roman legions infiltrated through the gaps in the phalanx and engaged in close combat. The long sarissa pikes became ineffective at such close range. The Macedonian soldiers dropped their pikes and drew their swords, but the Romans were far superior in close combat with their short gladius swords. At the same time, the Roman left wing launched a rapid attack on Perseus's right wing. Soon after, the Macedonian cavalry, led by Perseus, joined the battle. The phalanx formation had completely broken down. Some units began to retreat, accelerating the collapse of the army. Although they continued to resist in a disorganized manner, they suffered heavy losses against the Roman legions. At this point, the Roman right wing regrouped and attacked the Macedonian army from the rear. This final blow caused the complete collapse of the Macedonian forces. The number of fleeing soldiers rapidly increased. The only unit that did not abandon the battlefield was Perseus's 3,000 elite soldiers. They fought to the last man and chose death. However, Perseus had already mounted his horse and fled the battlefield.
Victorious, victorious. Erastus necessitas. Horarius despondeo.
Thus, one of the most powerful phalanx armies in history was destroyed by the Roman legions. The military legacy of Alexander the Great was also buried with this battle. From this point on, nothing remained to prevent Roman dominance over Greece and Macedonia. At the end of the battle, 20,000 of Perseus's soldiers were killed and 11,000 were captured. Perseus himself was also captured and taken to Rome. Thus, the Macedonian Kingdom was completely abolished.
Whatever